We're delighted to be here to be talking about enterprise, our approach to enterprise, and particularly the capital compass model that we developed and the employability self-evaluation test. So what we're going to take you through in the next 40 minutes, we'll introduce ourselves first, and then we thought we'd introduce you to Solent, tell you a bit about the university so you understand the context that we work in. We're going to tell you a bit about how we support enterprise in the university, and specifically how we have tailored our approach based around the needs of our students. So developing our understanding of our students and how we've tailored our approach. David then is going to take you through the capital compass model and how that works, and again contextualize that against other models. And then how out of that we developed the EASY test, the employability self-evaluation test. Sounds an easy test. And finally, I'm going to take you through just a couple of case studies just to, again, show you how we work in practice within the curriculum around all of these areas. So by way of an introduction, I'm Caroline. I'm head of employability and student enterprise here at Solent. My background, I worked in advertising for very many years and then started lecturing as an associate lecturer. Over time, I became a senior lecturer in marketing communications, and I taught for many years on our advertising degree here at Solent. And a lot of my focus was on the employability of our graduates and getting them into the graduate level jobs in the industry. I then moved over and became involved with Solent Creatives, which is our in-house agency where we match up our talented creative students with local businesses and we empower them to go out as freelancers. So it's giving them a very different kind of work experience, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on. And then lastly, last August, I was appointed as head of employability, as I say, in student enterprise. And the idea really that I am linking academia, the academic side of what we do, the curriculum, with the great things that go on within Solent Futures, which is the name of our employability service. And this is my colleague David.
Hello. So thank you, Caro. Yes, I'm David Ristance. I'm one of a large team of people in Solent Futures. Specifically, I'm part of the programme engagement team, so I work here with some other careers advisors, and we also have a colleague who's a resource development specialist, and our role involves working directly with academics to support them with developing employability and enterprise activities in the curriculum. We also provide one-to-one careers advice and guidance to students, and generally keep fairly busy, don't we, Caro? Yes, Caro keeps us busy. Yes, I've worked in schools and sixth forms. I had a while working for the National Careers Service before working at Southampton Solent University. I did a psychology degree before, many years ago, and so I suppose I'm just someone that's quite interested in what makes people tick. I'm particularly excited about models such as the Solent Capital Compass. There are many other holistic models out there which are taking a broader view of the career development process. So I think we live in quite exciting times at the moment. So maybe I'll just leave things there. So over to you, Karen.
We'll come back to David in a sec. So first of all then, just to put us into context, so Solent University, we are very industry focused. It's in our DNA that we are helping students to become more employable, to reach their goals in terms of their careers, wherever that might be, whether that's being traditionally employed, setting up their own business, working as a freelancer, or going on to further study. As a background, we have 9,414 full-time students. Obviously, we have a lot more part-time students, but the core of our students are 9,414 full-time, and 96.3% of those come from state schools, with 33.1% from low participation neighbourhoods. And in actual fact, 70% of our students, they are the first in their families to come to university. So we have a very, very conscious and we're very aware of our widening participation and the need to support those students into the university who maybe don't have that experience of what university is actually like. We have been voted one of the top creative universities in the UK by Which University for 2 years in a row. Solent has two key areas really where we have, I suppose, particular fame, which is in the creative area and also maritime. Obviously, we have courses ranging across a wide range, all the sort of business areas, a lot of art and design, a lot of digital areas, computer, and web development, all those sorts of areas. But those are two key areas for us. And we were delighted that last year we were named as one of the world's top 100 fashion schools. Because of the nature of our students, the destiny of many of our students will be that they will work part-time, they will work for themselves or as freelancers. So we do a lot of support around enterprise, and particularly that area, that encouraging those students who are going to have to work for themselves, who maybe will have a portfolio career. For example, in film production, something like 90% of people who work in film production are freelance. So that is the destiny of our graduates. So we need to recognise that and support that. And in the most recent HEDKey rankings, we actually ranked as 9th for graduate business startups. And that really is around those sorts of students who are going out there, perhaps as sports coaches, maybe as illustrators, artists, and they're working for themselves, they're developing a practice, and they're setting themselves up in business. So we recognise the need to help those students to really commercialise their creative skills and make themselves marketable in what can be a very, very competitive market. So in terms of what we do to support enterprise, we have a number of different initiatives across the university, and these are just some of them really. We have Solent Creatives, which I already mentioned when I talked about myself in the beginning. So this is our creative agency where we match up students to businesses who come to us with freelance opportunities. And just to put that into context, we have 1,235 business contacts on our Solent Creatives database alone. And just in the last year, so up to May, the figure was up to May the 10th, we had 809 new students who actually registered with Solent Creatives. So it really is big. So this is students choosing to come to Solent Creatives to say, I have a creative skill and I would like to work on projects with businesses externally. And we had 415 creative projects in total just in the last year. Now that may range from something like a logo design to a whole website design. It could be making a film for Southampton Airport, for example, or it might be helping at an event, being promotional support at an event. So it could be a wide range of different skills. We've also embedded Solent Creatives into the curriculum through a series of options, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we've done that later on. But let's take, for example, if it were a film crew working on a film for the local Southampton Airport, which we do a number of different initiatives for them. What would happen is that Solent would arrange for the airport to come in and brief the students. The students would take that brief, they'd ask any questions that they had at that meeting, and then the students would be empowered to go off and work directly with the airport to do everything that they need to do. So they'd have to do all the health and safety required, all the consent forms required. Obviously, health and safety around an airport can be extremely rigorous, so they have to make sure they complete all of that. And they work directly with that airport. Any financial negotiations are between the airport and the students. And we're just there to support them. So we're giving those students the chance to build their confidence by actually doing it, by actually being freelancers in that context. Other initiatives that we have are Retail Solent, which is our own shop that we have set up in a Southampton centre. So it's outside the university, it's actually in a retail environment, and it's run completely by our students. They do everything in terms of the merchandising, stock, actually being in the stores, so that's brilliant for some of our fashion marketing and merchandising type students. But also a majority of the products that are stocked within the store, not all of them, but the majority actually come from our students. So let's say it's an illustrator who's designed some cards. They have the opportunity for those cards to be stocked in Riso. Riso go out all over the place and do pop-up shops as well, so they're given the experience to go out to do all sorts of different things. They were recently down in Bristol, for example, with a pop-up shop. So it's a great, again, living example of our students being able to get on and actually become enterprising. We have Solent Productions, which is a production company within the university that handles more bigger commercial projects than the smaller freelance projects that go through Solent Creatives. Solent Acoustics, which uses some of our acoustics technology. Essentially, that's consultancy run by staff, but students get involved where possible. We send students out to the festivals, so we have students who are filming and helping with all the audio around major festivals across the country. And we have a games academy. I mean, I can't read details of all of them, but it's just to give you an example of some of the initiatives that we have, where we try really, really hard, whilst they're with us, to give students that enterprise experience. In terms of specifically supporting entrepreneurialism and our more entrepreneurial students, we have various different things that we offer. We have enterprise training, so that goes across the year, where students can go to boot camps or to different workshops that will help them with different aspects of their business, depending on what stage they're at. We offer funding for students in graduate enterprise. Graduates can apply for funding up to 3 years after they leave us. So that's a panel that they have to pitch to. They have to pitch their idea. They have to say and justify what they want to spend the money on and how that will help them set up their business. So that might be, for example, a film production student saying that they need a camera or they need a drone or something like that that will help their business to get off the ground. And we can help fund that kind of activity. We've just recently launched a number of graduate entrepreneur internships. So we will have 10 this year, where students are given the opportunity to actually set up their businesses whilst we pay them and support them for 6 months. So we will actually give them a mentor, they will have a business advisor to work with, they'll have regular meetings on the progress of their businesses, they will also have to do various research around their businesses, and that research then will fit into research that we're doing. We will also ask them to support our student enterprise activity, so they will attend networking sessions, they will act as mentors for our undergraduates. So there's a bit of an exchange and a quid pro quo in there, and we're really excited about that initiative. And what's really interesting is that the applications that have come in are all very, very different. So we're not going to just have 10 businesses that all look the same. We're going to have some very diverse businesses. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes and how we can help those students to get those off the ground. We do support with mentors, so we have enterprise mentors. For example, this afternoon we have our professional mentoring celebration, where we celebrate those mentors that have supported our mentees, and a number of those are around students who want to set up their own businesses. We've set up a number of new courses around enterprise, so we have a top-up in creative enterprise and a master's in creative enterprise, and these are very much, again, as I mentioned earlier, about taking a student who has creative skills and help giving them that commercial edge, that understanding of the creative environment that will help them to actually get their businesses off the ground and actually succeed and last. Enterprise is embedded in the majority of our creative courses, so as well as learning their creative skills, they will be being taught how to be a freelancer, for example. And we have some interesting innovations around that. So in our video games courses, we have an option where there's a placement year, and students can actually set up their own business during that placement year. And we have a number of students who choose to do that because, again, in video gaming, the likelihood is they will be working for themselves. And we've had some really successful businesses coming out of that. And we also support networking groups. So we have SENS, which is for our alumni, effectively. And we have Sparks, which is our undergraduate enterprise society. So all of that is what we do, and I think one of the most important things is that understanding that the nature of our students, being creative students, is that, you know, they really need that different kind of support. It is about understanding their career aspirations and thinking, actually, what these students need is that support on how do I become a freelancer, and also to give them those experiences that gives them the confidence around that. And one of the things that we did recognise with our students that we kind of knew anyway was this idea that they lack networks and they lack confidence. So they don't have the natural networks around them if they were thinking of setting up a business, and they didn't always have the confidence that they might need. And out of that, my former colleagues, Rosie Jones and Richard Sand, developed the Capital Compass model to sort of try and help us understand the makeup of our students. And associated with that was a test that would help students and staff identify the strengths and weaknesses of our students and therefore tailor the curriculum and help the students tailor their own plans and how they were going to get to where they want to be. So I'm going to hand you over now to my colleague David, and he's going to take you through the Capital Compass model and also how that actually works.
Thank you, Caro. So, yeah, as in most universities, there's an awful lot going on, and so Caro's talked a little bit about how the easy test was developed. And yeah, there's a tagline there: employability is more than writing a CV, and enterprise is more than writing a business plan. So there's a lot that goes in to people managing their careers, and surprisingly, there are various models out there that try and map this. I'm going to go through a few in the higher education context. So one of the first models that I heard about that really had a holistic slant was the Skills Plus model by Peter Knight and Mance York. Some of you might have heard of that one. Then Lorraine Blackberry-Poole and Peter Sewell have created the Career Edge model. Just give you a moment to read through the different things that particular model looks at. And then there's our model that Cara mentioned, so developed by Rosie Jones and Richard Sant. I'll be talking about the different elements of that in more detail. So Richard moved from Solent Futures to work at UAL, and he worked with some other colleagues to develop the Creative Attributes framework there. And then the final one, just up the road, Michael Tomlinson has developed the Graduate Capital Compass model at Southampton University. So the idea of capitals has been around for quite a while, but as far as I can see, Michael's taken them and put them together into a very coherent model there. So you might have noticed that I sent you a link earlier about that you can click on in the conversation comments. But if you click on that, that will take you to the Solent Capital Compass. More information about that on our Solent University file store. All the other models that are highlighted, I suppose they look like lollipops. At some point, Amelia said that everybody will have access to this particular resource. If you just click or tap on the lollipop, that will whiz you off to the relevant place to find out more. So, yeah, Caro's just highlighting them there. Thank you very much. Brilliant, brilliant. So, just a few comments then about these models. These aren't all the models that exist, but they're some of the ones that, well, I personally have found particularly useful. And I suppose it's something that each model is developed in a historic context. So if you're looking at the Skills Plus model, for example, the U, E and M are in many ways all related to the core teaching and lecturing activities that colleagues will be involved in doing. And one of the things that I got a sense of when reading about that model quite a few years ago was that it's this general idea of, there are many practical ways to support students to develop their career development, to support them with their employability. And it's not a matter of, wholesale change, of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's actually doing, in many ways, a lot of what we're doing at the moment, but we're adding some other elements in there, but validating and recognising the importance of the subject, of efficacy beliefs, so students will be taking those into their studies, and reflection, learning and thinking. I put leaning and thinking, there you go, a deliberate mistake there. So that's all a core element of the academic teaching and learning process that we'll be supporting students to engage with. So I mentioned how Richard, for example, had moved from Solent University to UAL, And as he moved there, as you'll see, some of the terms have changed, but in a way that makes sense, because the types of things that Richard and his colleagues have been looking at there, they're wanting to use a form of language that makes sense in that particular institution. So all the different models, I think, are holistic. If you look at the keywords that are talked about there, you'll see that they cover some of the classical things that people think about in the process of developing your career, but they do look at more identity aspects as well. And, you know, everything is very much interrelated. So I'll be talking about that a bit more in a moment. Yeah, and at risk of an IP issue here, I'm going to take a little bit of a dig at Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. I don't think there's one model to rule them all, so we've got a variety of models here, and no one really has, as far as I can see, a claim on being the truth, the most useful one. If there was, that's the only one that we'd all be using. And so people use them flexibly. I think about how I use the Solent Capital Compass here at the university, both with students and with academic colleagues. I'm sure there'll be a lot of similarities with how my other colleagues in Solent Futures use it, but I might look at it in a slightly different way and use slightly different language as well. So we like to look at, you know, it's useful to have this historical context, and maybe that helps to see where we fit into the scheme of things. Oops. Very sensitive touch screen. Yeah. Okay, right. So talk a little bit about the EASY test, which, as Caro said, is the way that students self-assess themselves on the 16 factors of the Solent Capital Compass. So this is what they do. They complete a questionnaire. There are 48 questions. It takes about 10 minutes to do. And at the end, the students will get a graph. So this is all done electronically. There's an app that we have developed in-house. Students complete this, they get the data, and they can go back, they can take the test again if they want to, they can review the results. It's all there, stored on the system for them to access and reflect on as they see fit. I haven't got it on this slide, but there's a narrative as well. So as well as the colourful graph, students will get details about each of the 16 different factors. They'll get the percentage score, and there will be examples of practical things that they can do to develop in each of those particular areas. So here are the 16 different areas. So the vernacular that we use is confidence, connections and capabilities, but the slightly more formal terminology is psychological capital, social capital and human capital there. So again, just have a moment to look at those. And you'll see that the human capital in many ways is typical of a lot of the classical career management skills that certainly myself as a careers advisor, I've been surrounded by that kind of knowledge for many years. But similarly, when we're talking with people about developing their career, people say, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know, which I actually disagree with that. But anyway, if you know someone, and you're not particularly very good, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to work out, but we talk about the value of connections, and we talk about people being confident as well. So what we're trying to do here is to get students to encourage them to reflect on these different elements and how they all interact. So a typical scenario is that we tend to do this in groups. We hire out IT rooms, and students will come in, they'll log in, and they'll actually go in and do the survey then. They'll get their results at that point, and then we'll ask them to critique the results, to discuss them with one of their chums on the course. Do they agree? Do they disagree with the results? It's quite interesting. A lot of people, when they look at the profile that comes out of the easy test, they'll say, oh yes, really like that, it seems to be quite accurate. And probably in most cases, people look at it and they think, yeah, this is a fair reflection of what's going on for me. Now, occasionally people say, oh no, I really, really disagree with that. And so I suppose this is one of the things that is really important to say about this, which is, while we're clearly we're proud of the easy test, we are not saying that it is the best thing since sliced bread. It's a useful resource, but we want people to critically engage with it and to reflect on the results and to make an informed decision about it. And so people then use that information in the session. For example, we encourage people to do an action plan. So we've got a typical example of, if you can remember the slide I showed you earlier about the results of someone doing the easy test. No, someone might have been quite low on the networking, and the interviews might have seemed a bit better. So maybe it was the CV and application side, they're scoring a bit better on that. But a very typical scenario is that, as we might be talking about through in a group, it will come out that even though the application side has been something that people looked at quite positively, they're thinking, actually I really need to work on this. Because if they're wanting to network, to build their network, but they've got an interview coming up with an employer to get some work experience, then they could be quite anxious about that. So doing practical things to resource them with that will hopefully help them move forward, secure their work experience, and then enhance their network. So that's just an example that I hope makes sense of how we encourage people to critique the results, and to always take it back to their individual experiences. So I've been talking about how students go through a process of completing the easy test and then hopefully critiquing the results. Now, there are different ways that this is done. As I said, sometimes it's a matter of academic colleagues, they'll arrange the hire of a room, and students will go and complete the test there, and we'll often come along, the programme engagement team from Solent Futures will go along, we might facilitate a session. Some courses do it slightly differently. They might send a link out to the students and say, right, just complete the easy test, because it is pretty straightforward in the process of completing it. Students then complete it, and then the academics would engage in the critiquing process themselves. But what I've got in front of you is an example of some aggregated data that's very, very typical for a lot of the courses here at this university, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's quite common in many other universities, well, not just in the UK, but around the world. So, as you'll see, the data is anonymous, so it's just put together. All you're seeing are some averages, some means on the right-hand side there. And so, imagine that this data was produced by 40 students. So, the data, the average for this particular course is 6.6. So that's the average of the averages. This data is just focused on the particular course. So what's helpful about this is we're not saying to a course, right, you've got to be at this particular percentage. They take a snapshot of what's going on, and then they might do something, and then they can review things again to see if things have improved or if other actions might need to be taken. So one of the examples that's quite low here is in the networking side of things, the connection side of things. And for an awful lot of people, and I worked at various other universities before working at Southampton Solent, And at a really early stage in their career, it's a very, very common thing for students to say, well, I haven't got a brilliant network yet, I'm starting to build it up, but it's going to take me a few years. So that's a fairly typical thing that will come out there. Students assessing themselves quite positively on the confidence scores, and again, industry experience as something that students might be wanting to get more of. But again, there's some really positive things. So self-awareness is quite high. A lot of students are very, very good at reflecting, at being aware of their strengths and weaknesses. And so even though industry experience might be a little bit low, quite a few are good at assessing their industry skills. Okay, well, I've got the skills and some of the knowledge that I need to help take things forwards. So bring on the work experience and I can make that happen. So I hope that's given you a bit of an overview of some of the different models that are out there about how students go through and complete this in particular courses, either with assistance from staff from Solent Futures, or other lecturing staff might really take the lead on things. And not only is information made available on an individual basis, but it's also available here on a particular course cohort basis, and that can feed into many different aspects of curriculum development. Right, so over to you, Caro.
Thanks, David. So I'm just going to take you through a couple of case studies. The first one is a unit, it's an optional unit called Freelancing at Solent Creatives. It doesn't completely use the easy test within the actual unit. The next one I'm going to show you actually does. But I think what's interesting about this is that we know that so many of our students now take the easy test within their courses that they are naturally able to think about areas such as self-efficacy, resilience and motivation, which are some of the topics that we cover in the unit. So just to tell you a bit about the unit. So the unit is for those students on a creative course who are thinking that they might want to freelance. They take the unit, and in order to pass the unit, they actually have to work on a freelance project, as well as completing a portfolio and a reflective journal to support the learning on the unit. So we cover all the practical things that you need to be able to do to be a freelancer. So tax, intellectual property, how do you acquire new business, how would you brand yourself, how do you make sure that your brand can be found externally by your customers. But we also look at this area of emotional intelligence, as I say, because it is important for the students to understand that actually, if you are going to go out as a freelancer, you do have to be confident in your abilities. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a hugely confident person, but you do have to have confidence in what you can do and what you can achieve. So self-efficacy works really, really well there. And actually that really works well in the context of them working on a live project with a client, because that gives them a real opportunity to see that they can do it. They have achieved what they have achieved. You need resilience. You do need to be able to pick yourself up. Sometimes the client doesn't like the first logo you designed for them and you have to go back and do it again. So that area of resilience is important. And just your motivation, how motivated are you to actually make this happen? So again, the easy test encourages that aspect of reflection. And again, we go on to do that within the unit. So we do encourage them to think about, what have they learned from being on the unit, from working with that client, and that from very practical aspects of what they might have learned, as well as what they've learned about themselves in the context of the unit as well. And also the final element within that is that we do that other aspect of goal setting. So it's kind of filling in the circle from having, you've done it, you've reflected on it, how are you going to plan to improve to get on to the next stage of where you want to go? So that's a very popular option for us amongst our creative students. And then what that does is give them a taster of Solent Creatives, and then often they come back to do more and more work for the agency. The other example that I wanted to just touch on was one called Work-Based Learning for Fashion and the Creative Industries. And this is a unit for the majority of the students on our fashion courses. So that could range from fashion graphics, fashion promotions, fashion merchandise and marketing, straightforward fashion. And they have to do 100 hours of work-based learning across the course of their actually, I can't remember if it's second or third year, actually. It's their third year, isn't it? Just checking with David here, who's looking less knowledgeable than me, but anyway. And as part of the unit, they have to do the easy test. So they are asked to do the easier test at the start, and they are given the option then to retest themselves at the end, so that they can look and reflect back again on how things have changed, having undertaken those hours of work-based learning. So they may have done that in RESO, they may have gone to work in RESO, or they may have found an external fashion PR agency to go and work in for a number of hours. But the important thing is that idea of reflection and developing an action plan. So taking what they've learned about themselves on the easy test, reflecting on that, and then taking that on and putting that into some sort of reflective portfolio. And again, this is a really useful unit. We've worked very closely with the team on this. So the Solent Futures team have gone down every Thursday to RESO, have been available in RESO, working with students so that the action plan they're developing, we're supporting and helping them around that. And again, some of that is incredibly practical stuff around CVs and cover letters and trying to identify places where they could do more work placements or work experience or where they could go to work. And other parts of it have been more about trying to help them to direct them and to understand more about how they can build in areas such as confidence and motivation. So, 3 minutes ahead of time according to my calculations, but I think we're coming on to any questions. I know we've had some through, Amelia, so...
Thank you very much, Caroline and David. That was a very interesting presentation. And we do indeed have a few questions for you already. So the first question is from Shauna Johnston. She's asking, is your funding for graduate entrepreneur internships external or internal?
Hi, Shona. It's internal, so that's university funded to support our entrepreneurial students. We do also offer a lot of advice and guidance on where students can go for other areas of funding, and we encourage them wherever possible to enter any kind of competitions or pitches for funding around any of the sort of obvious organisations that help and support those sorts of areas.
Thank you, Caroline. If anyone has questions, please pop them on the chat on the left-hand side. We've got a few more questions to respond to. Arif is asking, can you elaborate on how you work effectively with the Student Enterprise Society?
Yes, so we have regular meetings with them, and in particular if they want to do any kind of workshops around specific topic areas, we try and facilitate that. Sometimes it might be us going and doing it. So for example, I did a workshop on marketing your business, but sometimes we get external speakers in for them and we'll help and coordinate that. So we'll get a specialist in to cover a particular topic. We share information with them about any competitions, for example, that come up. We've been involved in various enterprise challenges like the Dynamo Challenge, and we encourage the society to get involved in that. What other things have we done? We encourage them to actually come along to some of the SENSE, that's our alumni, graduate entrepreneurs, so because it's a very safe way to network. So we encourage our current students to come along to some of those sessions and network with people who were in their shoes, 1, 2, 5, 10 years previously. So we encourage them to come along to that so that they can develop their networking skills. We've also worked with our enactors as well. So we've helped fund, for example, they needed some funding transport to go to the national competition, and we helped fund that transport for them. So really, any way that they need support, we're there to help them. Obviously, it's a student-led society, so we're not running it in any way, but they kind of know that we're there if they need anything. One of the things, if they get a speaker drop out at the last minute, they come to us, and very, very often we can find someone that can fill their shoes if someone's dropped out, that kind of thing, really.
Thank you. We've got a question for Pauline. Pauline is asking, do you undertake any work with students before they do the survey on understanding employability?
Shall I? Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, it will vary at what time we see the particular students. So sometimes it might be as part of a first year unit, where they're looking at various aspects of their career development, and they might be completing the easy test as part of that. So if that's the case, there'll be, quite a coherent package of information about employability and enterprise development that will be part of that. But it varies. Some courses They're really keen for the employability, for students to do the easy test, the employability enterprise self-evaluation test. But they might have done that, they might have done some careers work in first year, but it might be the second year, and, you know, there's not like a 3-line whip that people have to do it, but they're really keen still for students to do it, maybe to refresh them, to keep them motivated. So maybe I might go in, or other of my colleagues might go in the second year. Second year is a classic time to support students to go out and get work experience, because even courses that don't have work experience formally built in, we're always encouraging students to get that professional experience while they're in university. Holidays between the second and third year is a very important time often for students to get that really industry relevant experience. So sometimes there might not be any particular unit that it's linked with, maybe there was a year ago, but we'll go in and use it as a refresher. And as well as doing the test, what we tend to do with students, as well as them engaging with it and critiquing it, is we'll use it as an opportunity to signpost a lot of the different support that's available. And as Karen, has said, there's a huge range of support that's available to students. So opportunities through mentoring now, for example, there's some fantastic opportunities there, and that often makes a really, really big difference to students.
Thanks very much, David. We've got a question from Deborah. She's asking, is it possible to access the ESE test template? I checked on your website and it is password protected, so I did wonder if that's something that you would be able or happy to share with us after the webinar.
Yes, it used to be open to the public actually, and it was only when there was a change to our website, so it was moved onto the portal, and then there was something odd happened on the portal, so it is now password protected. But so we're trying to get that changed. What we can do is send you, Amelia, and you can share all the questions. So we can show all the questions, and then what we can do is, as and when it does again become public, because you're not the only people that have asked for that, we can obviously give out that link to you, and you can maybe share that again. But I'm not sure when that will be. There seems to be some software incompatibility, so you're actually driven from our portal to our VLE, and the VLE is where it's effectively password protected. So we need to get it into another sort of format. So it's not an easy fix, unfortunately, but we're very happy to share it wherever we can. So, and I mean, if anyone particularly wanted to, they're very welcome to come and visit us, and we can show how the test works. I mean, I suppose potentially we could do the test online if it would show on the thing, but I don't know if the web link would show on the...
We could share your screen, but whether we'll have enough time, we only have another 15-minute session of the session. But if people are keen,
we'll have to come back.
Yeah, but if people are keen to see that, we can do that. So if you want to see that, please do let us know in the chat. In regards to what Caroline has just said, yes, indeed, if she sends me a PDF of the questions, I will be circulating them and I'll make them available on the webinar pages, where we'll have all resources from all webinars, so you'll be able to access those there. We also have a question from Ruth Donnelly. Is the test usually taken in the curriculum time?
Yeah, so as I said before, it varies. There's not a 3-line whip for people to do the easy test here at the university, but some courses have very much taken to it. They can see the value of it. As Caro has said in one of the examples that she gave, self-reflection is crucially important, and so colleagues are asking students to do the easy test as part of modules that might have a career development focus, and they're using that formally within the curriculum and then reflecting on the results, and they might be developing a career development plan as part of it. So we do have an additional unit that people can do called the CV and Career Building unit. So a lot of courses will do bespoke units where they might be addressing career development issues in a way that's very, very specific to that particular course. So, for example, I work with psychology, and what they've done is in the second year, students work with some local charities, and they apply various social psychology theories with charities and with other organisations to come up with solutions to address those particular issues that the organisations might be dealing with. So there are some ways that courses take forward the employability side of things in a way that's very, very specific to that course and might use really course-specific information. For some students, however, maybe there's not a unit that's really, really employability focused, or maybe they've done a unit and they want to get some more, so they can do the CV and career building unit, and all the students on that unit are encouraged to do the easy test and to reflect on the results. And if I look at my crib sheet in front of me, there is some data that we've got which shows how students completing the CV and career building unit in the 15-16 academic year, the average level of confidence before doing the course was 7.1, and it rose to 8.2 at the end of the course. And in the 16-17 academic year, it was 6.9, the average before, and that rose 1 point, so 10% rise there, to 7.9% by the time that students had finished that particular course. So yes, it varies. Some, it's very much within the curriculum, but again, we do know that some students, the word's got out there, and some students will just do the easy test themselves, and if that's the case, well, that's just absolutely fantastic.
Okay, thank you, David, for answering that. Ruth is also saying thanks. We've also had a message from Brian McEwen saying thank you very much and great session. If there are any other questions, please submit them on the chat on the left-hand side. We've now covered all questions that were asked in this session beforehand. We still have another 10 minutes to answer questions, so you're very welcome to do so. Shauna has said also many thanks for an interesting session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, if there are no questions, then we can conclude the session today with a special thank you to Caroline and David, who have joined us from Southampton Solent today to talk about the way they deal with enterprise and entrepreneurship at the university. It's been a very interesting session indeed, and I think we've all learned quite a bit from it. I'll be circulating information post this session via email with information about our next webinar, which is next Thursday, and we'll be joined by colleagues from University of Dundee and colleagues from University of Newcastle to talk about engaging staff in enterprise and entrepreneurship. And once again, thank you all for joining us, and I'll be in touch over email.
Yes, thank you very much from Solent as well. We enjoyed it. It was our first time, and David and I both enjoyed delivering a webinar for the first time. It's very odd delivering it and not seeing any reactions at the other end, so we both found that quite difficult. But Amelia, if anyone wants to talk to us about this, obviously our contact details are easy to get hold of, and both David and I would be very happy to share whatever we can.
And of course, we'll be sharing your contact. Well, if you're happy for us to do so, we'll share your contact details with the group. So if they can, if they want to come and visit you and see the test in action, they can do so.